Hey everybody, CVH here, and today we're going to be talking yet again about the monthly reward card for Elder Scrolls Legends, this time for the month of October. If you've been following the channel for a long time, this should come as no surprise. Monthly reward card is spoiled near the end of every month. It was spoiled yesterday, in this case. Gave myself a bit of time to think about it and mull over its possible implications. But I like to do a monthly video sort of rambling on, a few of my thoughts organized, don't worry, not too much rambling, but just give my brief first impressions about the card, where it might see play, where it might not see play, its overall power level, things like that. So, the card was just revealed yesterday. Oh, and as a reminder, I do want to go over, for anyone who's new to the game watching the video, how you obtain this. If you reach rank 9 in the ranked ladder for the month, if that's a rank you've achieved, you get 1 copy of the monthly reward card. If you reach rank 5 during the month, you get 2 copies. And if you reach rank 1 or legend, you get 3 copies, a full playset of the monthly reward card when it comes out the following month, and it'll be available to us very soon. Currently, it is available to look at in the collection manager, as you'll see. You can also pick it in Arena. It's available to be drafted sometimes, and you can also get this card off of random effects early. There's always a couple threads that pop up on the Reddit. I just saw someone play this card. How come I didn't get it yet? Well, it's probably off of a random card or an arena. But here is the monthly card just revealed yesterday, Dushnikh Yal Archer. And I wanted to show you guys the collection manager version because the premium art just looks pretty sick on this one. A stark contrast to some of the other monthly reward card premiums. But let's take a look at the card itself. 4 cost, 3/3, guard in strength, with summon, deal 1 damage, or destroy an enemy support. So looks like a pretty versatile card, pretty flexible card. So we need to assess the general power level of the card first. And throughout reading a bit of the Reddit threads and streaming, people have asked my opinions about it. I've been able to get a pretty wide variety of people's responses to this card, and opinions are diverse. We'll put it like that. I've heard everything on all sides of the spectrum about this card, from, oh my god, another aggro card, or hooray, another card that's good against aggro, or it's total crap, it's amazing. Someone even said they were so mad about how bad it looked, they were actually kind of upset that they had climbed the ladder during the month of October, and some people have said it's just amazing, and it's going to be pushing red decks to the forefront. So I'm a little bit more middle of the road on this one. If you guys have seen my card reviews and first impressions videos before, you will know that I tend to take a little bit of a conservative approach before saying card is too good. I'm usually the first one to say it's a little bit bad. And on first glance, this card did seem a bit underwhelming to me, not to the point where I was upset about it or I thought it would see no play. We've definitely had our fair share of completely unplayable monthly reward cards like Battle Reef of Dusk and a few others that I just can't even honestly remember right now, and just a couple that were fringe playable as well. But a 4 cost 3/3 guard to me does not seem aggressive. And I know there are certain things about this card that make us immediately want to rate it in an aggressive deck surrounding it. It is a strength card. We typically associate red as being the most aggressively oriented attribute in the game, strength that is. And it is also an orc, which is one of the most aggressive races. If you look at orc decks, they're pretty much just aggro decks. Some of them take it a bit slower and go for the mid-rangey approach. And I guess in one of those, this card could potentially fit, but an orc deck that I think is at max potential, peak operation, should be more on the aggro side of things. And I don't really think a 4 cost 3/3 guard is an aggro card, depending on the effect, obviously. But its effect is also not super aggressive, I would say. Deal 1 damage, yeah, that can go face, but it's not a lot of damage, and we already have Stone Shard Orc in Orcs, which can deal a lot more damage to creatures if there's a problematic guard in the way, or if you're trying to race, and it can destroy an enemy support. But if you are an aggro deck, you really have to take a critical look at what supports you're actually going to be up against in the early parts of the game. Obviously, there's Histgrove, but Histgrove gets the ramp immediately if you're up against a ramp deck. The Swamp Leviathans aren't going to make an impact for probably 10 additional turns after the Histgrove is played or something like that, and that's well after your aggressive Orc aggro deck should have probably tried to close out the game. And if you haven't closed out the game, it's very unlikely that this Dushnikh Yal Archer getting rid of one of your opponent's Histgroves is going to actually make an impact and be able to swing the game back around. So I don't really think there are aggressive implications as far as removing enemy support. Yeah, it can be good against support control mage. Those supports are very impactful if you're an aggro deck. Goldbrand can be a problem, Elixir of Vitality can be a problem, but that's a very fringe case, and usually if they're getting those supports online and rolling against you, the window is probably closed at that point. But I do think the support removal does add this card, give this card a lot of versatility. Obviously, a 4-cost 3/3 guard with the ping effect is already not a bad on-curve play against an aggro strategy if you are a slower red deck, which is where I'm getting to that. I really think this card probably goes in a more mid-rangey or control-oriented deck using strength, which again aren't the most common right now. We don't see too many like that. Like I said, red is typically attributed to strength. Strength is typically attributed to aggressive decks, so we don't really see too many control-y red decks, but some have popped up recently. We have at times seen control and ramp warrior decks, control crusader decks, and the most popular right now is the control rage archer deck, and a lot of people are saying that is where exactly this card would potentially find a home. And I can't help but agree somewhat. 4-cost 3/3 guard ping already good against aggro, and it gives slower red decks a really cost-effective support removal card instead of Belligerent Giant. Belligerent Giant is an amazing tool to pressure if you're playing a mid-rangey deck, and of course it is really good with Unstoppable Rage if your deck does include Rage, but if you're just a control deck, and maybe you want to include it in addition to Belligerent Giant, but Belligerent Giant, just kind of a slow card if you're just using it to kill a support, and you're not ready to rage it off and kill an entire board, basically Dushnikh Yal Archer could get the job done a lot better, and if you're up against an aggressive deck using supports, this card could remove that support, and even though you don't get the ping effect, then you don't get the 1 damage in. After you remove that support, it's not something they can straight up ignore. Against many of those decks, a 3/3 guard is way more relevant than a 7/4 without guard, because if you play Belligerent Giant to remove a Divine Fervor or something, your token opponent's probably just going to ignore the Belligerent Giant. If they probably don't have removal for it, they're a pretty aggressive deck, so they're just going to go for the face. They have no reason to respect it, and with this card, you're paying 3 less than a Belligerent Giant, and while you do have less stats, they are stats that your opponent is going to have to deal with in some way, because you can just put the guard in front of whatever your opponent's about to attack you with. So you get more Magicka efficiency, meaning you can play this card much earlier, but if it's in the late game, you can then play other cards alongside of it if you're using it for the destroying of supports. And of course, if your aggressive opponent didn't play a support that game, you can just use it to deal 1 damage, killing cards like Greystone Ravager. Just pretty good value, but it's value that I think would make more sense in a slower red deck. In aggro, I could potentially see this card seeing some amount of play if the aggro mirrors became super relevant. Yeah, if you put this card in the mono red sort of aggro crusaders that are really popular right now, or even in an orc deck, yeah, it might make sense in orcs just because it does say orcs. In a mirror match, you're going to be pretty happy you have it. The 4-cost 3/3 guard coupled with possibly even outright removing something for free with the ping effect is going to be powerful, and of course you're going to be able to remove your opponent's Northwind Outposts in the mirror match. Up against tokens, you can remove Divine Fervor. Sometimes that effect is even better than the ping. If it's an orc, you also get the orc synergy there as well. But besides those mirror match situations, I think this card would just effectively slow down your aggro deck in virtually every other matchup, and I don't think, on first glance, I'm not super into that. I don't think I'll be making room for that. I want my 4 costs in aggro to be primarily pressuring tools, and if I was going to play something a little bit slower, it might be a card like Hive Defender, which is a little bit better overall, a little bit stickier on the board, but I'm not totally sure about that. What I am sure of is that this card does have a lot of utility in decks that, again, I don't think are amazing right now, besides, obviously, the Rage Archer, very popular, like I mentioned, Control Crusader, Control Warrior, not amazing at the moment, and this card does compete with a lot of other really powerful 4 Magicka cost creatures. Looking at Hive Defender, like I mentioned, Earthbone Spinner, Cloudrest Illusionist, Preserver of the Root, depending on what class you're playing, obviously, it's always going to be competing with the Earthbone Spinner, and like Fell the Mighty for another 4 cost card. And of course you have Skaven Pyromancer on turn 3, which pings an entire lane, essentially, which is really good against aggro. So do you really need this card? I guess it depends on the deck. In Crusader, I'm a little bit less sold on it, even though I think that is a pretty strong control shell, basically. It is competing with Hive Defender and Cloudrest, but I could definitely see this in Rage Archer and Control Warrior decks to start, especially Doomcrag Warrior, because Doomcrag Vampire gives lethal to any other creature you're playing in the lane, so Dushnikh Yal Archer could basically just kill anything you want when you summon it, in addition to the added utility of being a guard or destroying enemy supports as well. And I would also like to mention just briefly, a lot of people seem to think we're reaching sort of a critical mass of support removal in this game. We already have Shadowfen Priest, and I've compared this card a little bit to Belligerent Giant because they're in the same color, and Vicious Dreg, obviously a neutral support removal. People are saying things like RIP Hissgrove and stuff. I don't think this card would be the reason any support decks, such as, ramped out with the Hissgroves, Northwind Outpost, and aggro decks, and, aggressive decks are playing more supports than ever right now, because best aggressive decks tend to be tokens with Divine Fervor or the mono red decks with Northwind Outpost. or close to mono red, at least with the outposts. But I don't think this card would really change too much as far as that goes. I think those supports are just going to still be good. This card just gives you another answer to them. A lot of people want to see support removal in colors that don't already have support removal. I personally think it's fine to keep it within a couple colors like purple and red, like it is right now, with Vicious Drake as a neutral option if you want a slightly less efficient card. Obviously, you're paying the same as a Dushnikh Yal Archer, but you don't have guard. You do have one more health point, but without guard, that's less relevant, and you don't have the versatility of dealing 1 damage if you don't have a support to get rid of. So I like this card for versatility. I think it pretty easily replaces Vicious Drake in any slower red deck that would be playing it, which I don't think any really were. With the more aggressive decks tending to run supports recently, I think it's a welcome addition if you're trying to play a slower red deck to have that answer to supports potentially with the guard earlier in the game. But these are just my thoughts. I don't think it's problematic design is my point with the whole critical mass of support removal thing. I don't think it's that insane of a card where every red deck will play it. Personally, I think it fits more in a mid-rangey or slower controller ramp-oriented red deck like Rage Archer or Control Warrior than an aggro deck, but I expect we might see some of it in aggro decks that really want to have powerful plays in the mirror matches as well. But as always, I'd love to hear your thoughts on the card. If you think it's a little bit too powerful, if you think it's a little bit underpowered, I'd love to hear your thoughts, what you're excited to play it in and test it in when we get the card at the beginning of next month. But if you've enjoyed the video, feel free to leave a like and stay subscribed for more Legends content. Follow my stream in the description, and I'll see you next time.